Hey fellas, Professor Salt here. I told you a while back, I told a few of you that I was going to try to make a video on how I make gaffs and how I make rig hooks, because they're both very similar. The basic idea is, obviously you need a gaff if you're fishing offshore from a kayak. So you buy a store-bought gaff. They're a little bit heavy. They have a wide gap so that they don't grab kingfish very well. They're made for something big and offshore. I don't know what, but they don't work well for what we're doing. What we need for the kayaks is about a 2.5 inch wide hook gap. Makes it easy to stick the fish and get them where you think you're going to get them. So we'll look at that. And the other thing you need is a handle that is quick, is lightweight. You can move it around, and will work well for the kayaker's needs. The first thing that I do is I go hit the secondhand stores in town and I find carbon shaft golf clubs. So basically, if you go in and you look at golf clubs and it's that shiny metal, that's not carbon fiber. Anything else, that's going to be your carbon fiber. And once you cut the head off, they're very lightweight, so they're really nice. They've got a waterproof handle built in that's grippy. So when you cut that head off, you're going to have a little hollow tube. And we're going to have to work on making that hollow tube the right diameter to accept the hook. So when we put it in, these won't fit. They've got to be drilled out a little bit. But that's the concept we're going to work on, is get yourself some golf clubs, get the heads cut off. You'll also notice if the handles are all the same length at the bottom, some of them are cut off different lengths. What you want to look for if you are only going to get a couple of golf clubs is thicker down towards the head is better, because when you cut it, you've got room to be able to put the wire, the metal, the hook, whatever you're going to put in there, in and make it fit. So here's my two gaff hooks. This one is the one that is stock. It's got that hook at the end that we don't want, so I took this other one, and you see what I did with it. I smoothed it out so that it's a much better fit for the end of the golf club. It's basically a 2.5 inch wide gap, but the problem is most gaff hooks are pre-made to go into a wood, like a broom handle, and then you wire them on. We don't need that piece kicking out to the side. That will not work going in a golf club. So what I do is I take a grinder and just shave it off. And when you shave it off, you can use that grinder and you can really smooth it out good so that it will go down into the shaft. And how do you hold it there? Any kind of two-part epoxy. It's going to be 2 syringes next to each other. You pop the lid, you squirt them into a medicine cup. The rig hook is about, or the gaff hook is about $6. So $6, another $3, and another $1 or $2. So you're dealing 10, 11 bucks plus a little bit of fun to put a project together. Now the other thing I want to make is a rig hook, and it starts the same way. It's a golf club. But then I went to Home Depot and I found this anodized aluminum round, 1/4 inch, 3 feet. That's what it says. So what I do with it is I take it, and on this end, by hand, I put a bend in it, because what we're going to do is reach around the ladder rungs on a rig. On the other end, alright guys, here's that 1/8 inch aluminum rod. Obviously the standard one is just smooth, and what I did is I used some rough sandpaper, roughed it up, and then I used a Dremel tool and I cut some hash marks all along around it. So all the way around I've got hash marks, and all that does is give the epoxy something to grip to. The gaff hook grips on its own. This one needs a little help sometimes to get enough grip so that it doesn't pull out. Alright guys, so you can see what I've got is I've got a 1/4 inch hole drilled there now. I've gone up in steps with the drill. You can't just go straight to a 1/4 inch and run it down the pipe. It'll crack, it'll splinter, it has all kinds of problems, generates a lot of heat. So I would suggest keep a container of water nearby. You can keep dipping it in there and cooling it down so you don't melt anything. I don't know what these epoxies melt at, but that generates a lot of heat. So now I can take my smoothed out gaff hook and test it. Cool. We've got our gaff pieces ready to assemble. They're not together yet. I just got them together just so that I've got my pieces matched. Okay, so I've got my 2-part epoxy. I've got just bottom of a medicine or bottom of a pill bottle. I cut it loose. It's going to be disposable. I'm going to mix the stuff in here. I have access to syringes. I teach a medical health science program at the college, so we've got a ton of these. The hospital's donated, so it helps me to suck it up, be able to put it in place. And then I took one of my kids' old cheap paint brushes that I can use to mix the epoxy together well. And then I have my 2 pieces ready to go. So basically, we're going to squeeze some epoxy in. I'm going to do enough for 2. I got a gaff and a rig hook I'm going to put together. And it's thundering outside. Okay, so we got this mixed up. It'll take about 5 minutes for it to set up. So one thing I'm going to do is put a little bit on the end of this and put it inside of there. If you don't have a syringe available, that's kind of your option. Since I have a syringe available, I can get it all to one edge as much as possible and suck it up. I don't want to make too much of a mess. I'm just going to put this into the club. Take that hook. You see there's a little bit extra. Take a little bit on the tip of my finger and create kind of a top edge on this stick and rub off all that I can. So it's not going to have a sharp edge where the carbon comes to a 90. It'll help knock that sharp edge off. So I'm going to take this and hang it up for 5 minutes. Let me get started on my other hook, so we'll be back. Alright guys, so the last thing we need to cover is we've made a couple of gaffs, we've made a rig hook, and we've made the hook part, the stick with the hook on it. Now we need to make the part that will attach the rig hook to the kayak. So what we need, I've got 100 feet of paracord, that 550-pound paracord, and I'm bringing out about 6 feet. I'm going to cut it, and anytime you cut this stuff, you want to heat it and seal it so that all the pieces melt together. Okay, so that's one piece of rope. A little longer, 8 or 9 feet. Exact amount does not matter. What does matter is you want your kayak to be far enough from the rig so when you hook to it in choppy weather or windy weather, that your kayak's not banging against the rig and damaging the plastic on your kayak. Don't forget to go back to your other end and seal that too. And at the risk of sounding like Captain Obvious, when rope melts, it's hot. Don't stick that on your fingers while it's a liquid, because it will burn you. Okay, so I have a longer piece of rope. It's going to go next to the kayak. I have a short piece of rope that's going to go up to the rig. And then I bought a bungee cord, came with the little S hooks. Took the S hooks off. So now I'm going to take this piece of rope and feed it through. So I'm going to start it through, use half the needle nose to push it. Come through. So all I'm going to do is tie a knot on this end, okay. And then I'm going to cut it a little shorter, and I'm going to melt that into a big ball to help it keep it from backing out. so it cannot back out. Perfect. Alright, so now it's not pretty. Nothing I use out there is very pretty for very long. On the other end, we're going to take that longer hank of rope, put it through the same way. Now, that's not going to come loose. Now we go to the other end that's going to be up against the boat, your kayak. We're going to do two things with it. I've got a hard foam, any kind of piece of foam that's hard foam. The styrofoam tends to tear up, it gets torqued, it gets pulled too much and tears itself up. But I'll take one of these, do the same kind of double knot. And then on the end, I'm just going to make a loop large enough that it'll fit over the foot peg on the kayak. Okay, so that's just enough. I can fit it over the foot peg and make it work on my kayak. Now, just to keep it from coming loose, the other option is you can just kind of heat this knot and it will harden. It doesn't melt the rope, but it hardens the rope so that it doesn't want to back out. It's going to be really hard to pick that knot out now. I don't need to pick the knot out. So now I have about 8 feet of rope. Comes to my bungee so that you don't shock or slap your kayak around as it jerks back and forth in the waves. And the other end, we're going to tie it onto our golf club handle that's got the hook. Okay, so it's been over 5 minutes. I've got my rig hook and the handle of it. I'm going to set it down. I've already drilled it, but I'm going to show you something. I've got a 3/16 drill bit, and what we need to do is push down, be off the edge of your table, and I've drilled through that handle. Now I'm going to take a piece of leader wire. I just took about 10 inches, folded it in half, and I'm going to feed that bent piece of leader wire straight through the golf club handle. And on the other side, I'm going to open it up a little bit and feed the end of that rope through it. Cinch it up. Grab it over here and twist it. And I'm going to pull until I get it out of there. So I've got a tight, snug piece coming through here, and I'm going to tie a big knot on one end. I'm going to take and I'm going to heat this knot up to kind of seal the rope against itself. So I'm not melting the rope, I'm just trying to get it hot so that it takes that set on the... It comes back, you will not pull that loose. And now your rig hook is one big continuous piece, and when you go hook up to a rig, you've got this piece, hook it onto the leg or the rung on the ladders. Every rig has a ladder on opposite corners, so you can go up there and grab onto that rung and float there beside the rig, catch snapper, catch whatever, take a rest, and when you're ready to get loose from the rig, you don't have to leave any junk stuck on the rig. Rig hook comes loose and away you go, and then you've got your gaff that we just built. Be able to land your fish. Ha ha ha!